Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. Tonight we have 2 hours of horror stories as per usual. I hope you all enjoy them. If you do, please be sure to drop a like rating. Let's see if we can reach 1001 likes on this one. Dropping a like on the video helps ensure more people see it, but it also just lets me know I'm doing a good job. Subscribing if you are new is also very much appreciated, as I do post content just like this all of the time. We've been at this for over 10 years. You can pretty much guarantee I'm shooting for at least another 10. Also, I know that this video is a few days late. I got really caught up with like Halloween plans, and I also had some dental stuff going on. Sounds like everything's good. I am perfectly fine. I do need to get my wisdom teeth removed, and I might be getting braces, so I'm looking forward to that. Anyways, I hope you all have a great night. I hope you enjoy these stories. Sit back, do whatever it is that you do to relax. Enjoy these horror stories with no mid-roll ads right after the ad after this intro. There won't be any more after that one. And as always, I hope you all have a great night. An act I learned as a child: to hold my breath if I am in a car that is cruising past a cemetery. I don't remember who told me, but I remember it was something my friends and I would follow religiously as children, no matter who was driving or where we were going. And if the windows in the car were down, it would be mass panic to roll them all up before those wheels crested the front of the cemetery. Back then, they were the manual crank windows, the ones that took all of my scrawny kid strength to get closed. But in those moments, they always managed to close in the nick of time. I'm not sure any of us knew why we were doing it. I certainly don't. Regardless, it's a practice I've kept up even though my 30th birthday is right around the corner. It wasn't like I had big plans for my birthday, but it would have been nice to be able to celebrate it. I remember making the concrete decision when I got my own license that I would keep playing the game for nothing if not for myself. Sometimes the practice seems silly to acknowledge, but my mindset has always been, I'd rather be safe than sorry. If other people are in the car, I'm discreet about it. Much less fanfare than when I was a kid. Just one large inhale as the tires continue to glide on the road. I casually roll the windows up like it's no big deal. Maybe like I saw a bug I didn't want to crawl inside the car. But it isn't always feasible to hold your breath in time. I mean, I don't always see the cemetery until I am smack in the middle of it. I immediately stop breathing when I realize what I am driving by. But at that point, it already feels too late. Until 2 days ago, I didn't know the consequences. Now I do. It's because I moved to a new town that all of this happened. I didn't know that the back roads that led to the craft store would contain so many cemeteries. It was in my nature to simply avoid these types of roads, to take the highway, even if there was more traffic. I was alone on my way to pick up supplies for one of my mini craft projects. I should have turned the car around when I saw the road that I was going to be on for 7 miles contained nothing but curvy, grassy, open space. It wasn't like there was anyone else in the car to question my actions. I should have known as I made my way down the winding road. There would be multiple cemeteries, but I told myself not to be ridiculous. A kid's game should not keep me from driving down the fastest route to somewhere. My other mistake was leaving my windows open. At this point, it was an act of defiance. I knew there would be cemeteries, but refused to acknowledge them before they arrived. Granted, these days, windows went up much faster with electronics, but apparently not fast enough. I didn't even know anything was wrong until the next day. I woke up groggy, whipping the sleep from my eyes as I stumbled down the hall to the bathroom. My eyes were bulging and bloodshot, as if something had been pressing on the inside of my skull, trying to get out through my eyes. A thin trickle of dried blood from sometime in the night caked itself onto my neck. I followed the line back to my right ear, as if something had been trying to force itself out that way. My nose was swollen, and the skin of my face was hot to the touch, as if fighting off some kind of infection. But before I go any further, I need to get back to the crux of it, the actual event. So, like I said, I was driving on an unfamiliar road with that familiar itch creeping up my back. The one that told me there would be a cemetery around every corner. The reason I didn't see it right away was because my phone distracted me. And before you sneer at me, I know I shouldn't be looking at my phone when I drive. But I just happened to be waiting for an important work update. The ironic thing was, it wasn't even the update I was waiting for. It was my sister in a crisis. She's always in a crisis, but usually her crisis doesn't impact me as much as this. They usually don't transfer over like a curse waiting to impregnate the next person. I clicked on the text to see a wall of blue with lots of exclamation points and angry face emojis. This is the reason I didn't realize my little red car had passed over the plane. I wasn't even reading the text. I closed out of the green message app almost immediately. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't something dire, something that actually needed to be taken care of at that moment. It's hard for me to describe to you the surge of fear that traveled down my back when I glanced back at the road. Of course, I stopped breathing immediately. Yes, I pulled up on all 4 window buttons as soon as my fingers unlatched from the wheel. It was over in mere seconds. One moment I was in the middle of driving by a cemetery, and in the next moment, past. The sun blazed into the car and started cooking everything within now that it had no way to escape. Even though the moment was over, I didn't want to roll the windows back down, as if I could gain favor from the ghosts if I just kept following the rules. But obviously I had to take in a breath at some points and blow it out the next. I continued to breathe and cook in the car, my air conditioning temporarily broken. I had all the tools to replace my blower motor, the part that crapped the bed last week, but since it was a nice day, I figured it could wait. So that's the reason for the sweat trickling down my back. Pure laziness. But I knew I couldn't be too careful and roll the windows back down. I eased my car around a bend, only to be faced with another cemetery. This one I could prepare for. I could see it a little bit ahead. I was able to take that deep breath in that I needed before driving by. I didn't even mind that I was roasting like a rotisserie anymore because I was safe. The closed windows and the lack of breath kept me safe. Would you think I was lying if I told you I encountered another cemetery a mile and a half down the same road? I swear it was the last one, but I didn't inhale any fresh, non-circulating car air until I parked and threw my door open 15 minutes later. Those breaths were some of the most satisfying I'd ever taken. The fall air hit my nostrils in such a cool, clean way. Maybe that was my mistake. I was too greedy with the fall air. The text that ruined my life? I know some of you must be curious. It was because her current boyfriend, the guy she'd been on 2 dates with, didn't like cats. Could you even call someone your boyfriend after 2 dates? She lived alone with 2 cats, Cinnamon and Sugar, so clearly this relationship could never work out. She was outraged that anyone could hate cats, especially her dream guy. Well, I guess he wasn't her dream guy anymore. By the time I checked out that craft store, I almost forgot about my escapade on the drive there. Like I said, I didn't realize the consequences. Up until yesterday morning, it was just a silly kids game. And yes, I answered my sister's text with all the correct platitudes like how dare he and you're too good for him. When I think back on it, I did take a different way home. Whether consciously or subconsciously is up for debate. There weren't any cemeteries on the way back. At least, not any I saw. That was 2 days ago. Almost 48 hours to the hour. Most of my hair has fallen out. I'm typing this with one finger. The only one left with a nail attached. At least it's my pointer finger. Small miracles and all that. The rest fell off last night. I found them clinging to my bed sheets. Toenails too. Those are gone. I tried voice to text with my computer, only to find I don't have a voice anymore. All that came out was strangled grasping noises. I guess it makes sense. When I looked in the mirror, my chest was sunken in. my neck shriveled, all the folds of my trachea and esophagus visible beneath the thin layer of skin. I'm starting to leave blood smears on my keyboard. I don't think this nail is going to last much longer. I guess I should get to my point soon. I think it's too far gone for me to ask for help. So I guess this has turned into one of those warning posts. You know, the ones that tell you to watch out. Always look behind that corner. Turn on the lights before bed. In this case, always check for cemeteries. Never take your eyes off the road. There are so many questions that must be left unanswered. What about the air conditioning or the heat? Can the ghosts get in if you turn those on? Was it my open window, or do the windows not matter? Is it all cemeteries? All ghosts? Do you have to be driving? I don't have time to answer any of these. I'm already infected, possessed, haunted, or whatever this is. You can test all these theories if you want. I'm not sure I recommend it. Another tooth tumbled out of my mouth a moment ago. I think I only have 2 left now. It's hard to keep my jaw closed. I'm trying to prevent the blood from trickling out. It's not working. The keyboard is slick now. My breaths are shallower. It's like I can't catch my breath. A bit ironic, as if the ghosts are still stealing the air from my lungs. Like I'm still driving past that cemetery. I think I only have a few moments left. Just enough to post this. I wonder what my family will think when I don't answer their calls. I wonder how long it will take them to find my body. I wonder if I will have a body to leave behind. At all. I'm a 26-year-old British male, and I graduated from university about 2 years ago. Not long afterwards, I found a remote job as a note taker. The job seemed simple enough. I would take weekly video calls with the client, jot down notes as he spoke about various subjects, and then send them to him for payment. The job description stated that the client was from Cairo, and apparently worked in the IT industry. He wanted someone who wasn't necessarily knowledgeable about the subjects he discussed, but was able to confidently write notes in English. I assumed he worked with several companies who needed these notes, and wasn't capable of translating them into competent text, or just didn't have the time. I applied for the job one evening, and within the hour, I received a call from an unknown number. Normally I don't answer those types of calls, but I'd been applying to as many positions as possible, finding myself in a slightly strained financial situation at the time. I wasn't going to ignore a potential interview offer. I answered, and a deep, gravelly voice spoke. It was the client from Cairo. For anonymity's sake, I'll just call him Eamon. He invited me to an interview on Teams the next day. The interview went well, better than well actually. Eamon was very friendly, and despite his deep tone, he had a good sense of humor. He gave me a sort of gentle giant vibe. He looked middle-aged, had a thick beard, and wore rimmed glasses. He barely asked about my experience, and although I'm not the most charismatic person, I felt that I'd won him over with my personality. On reflection, I realized that neither of these things ever mattered to begin with. After signing the contract and starting the job, I began to notice something about Eamon. He spoke slowly, slower than I expected him to. This made the job easier, but also dragged the sessions on far longer than necessary. I didn't mind too much. I was paid by the hour, so the longer, the better, even if I did occasionally get a bit bored. Eamon would often stop the sessions to take a break for 10 to 15 minutes. His camera was always off and his sound muted during the time, which I didn't mind. I used it as an opportunity to grab a snack. When he came back on camera, he always seemed different, more relaxed. I could never quite describe it, but he spoke even slower. I assumed he might be on medication, or even drugs. Honestly, it was none of my business. I'd worked for him for around 3 months by the time Christmas rolled around. Every year, I traveled home to see my parents and grandparents. It was tradition by that point. About a day before I drove home, I received the most unexpected message imaginable. It was a screenshot, sent to me by email from Eamon. I had to blink several times to make sure I was seeing what I thought I was seeing. It was a single plane ticket, one return flight from London Gatwick Airport to Cairo International. At first I was just confused. What was the context? Did he expect me to fly out to see him over Christmas? Eamon had never mentioned family once, but even if he had one, why the hell would he want me there? I was weirded out, but figured it must have been a mistake. There was no message, no title, no explanation. I assumed he'd meant to send it to someone else in the UK. I replied within minutes, asking if he'd meant to send it to somebody else. His response surprised me even more. It was firm but simple. No, I didn't. Can you not make it? I was definitely concerned. I didn't want to be rude, but I also didn't want Eamon thinking this was okay. It breached employer-employee boundaries tenfold. I let him know that. While I appreciated the gesture, I already had family plans, and it wasn't appropriate to buy me plane tickets to another country without even asking first. I expected a quick reply, but there was nothing. A week passed, then two. By the time I was eating Christmas dinner with my family, still nothing. At this point, I figured the job was over. I was frustrated, but what could I do? The man lived in another country and paid me from one bank account. My dad found it incredibly strange. He told me I should check the contract to see if there was any clause about a no-contact period. If Eamon had broken the contract without a legitimate reason, I might be entitled to compensation. For the next week, I combed through the lengthy contracts. Not much stood out. It was mostly legal mumbo-jumbo, but just as I was about to give up, I found something. A clause stated that the employer could cease contact for a maximum of 3 weeks without explanation. If broken, a fair payout would be deposited into my account, and the contract would become void. I was shocked this clause even existed. Why did it exist? The most interesting part was the 3-week period was due to end the next day. So the next day, I constantly checked my emails, hopeful he'd message me, but also hopeful he wouldn't, so I'd get that payout. And exactly an hour before the 3 weeks were up, I received one. It was from Eamon. He apologized profusely, saying he'd been busy over Christmas and was sorry for buying the plane ticket without telling me. He claimed it was an early Christmas present, but realized it was in poor taste. He finished by asking if I was still interested in working for him. Of course I was. I needed the money and I didn't want to give up the easiest job I'd ever had. Eamon might have been odd, but I'd never meet him in person. He was harmless, behind a computer screen. When we jumped on a call a few days later, I was back home in my flat. The first thing I noticed was that Eamon was sitting in a new room. Previously, he'd always been in the same one. As if he could read my confusion, he immediately said he was in the middle of a move, and would be staying in multiple Airbnbs to save money. I thought nothing of it, and our calls went on as normal. Our calls became less frequent over the next few weeks. 1 or 2 a week instead of 3 or 4. Each time, Eamon was in a new room. Again, I didn't think much of it, until something made my blood run cold. Eamon was finishing a discussion about cybersecurity issues. I was halfway through jotting down bullet points when he announced it was time for a break. I looked up at the screen. Unlike most times, when Eamon would turn off his camera before leaving, he stood up first, revealing the wall behind him that his body had been blocking. At first, what I saw didn't register. Then, just before the screen went black, I realized what it was. A Type G socket. If you don't know, a Type G socket is exclusive to the United Kingdom, meaning Eamon was not in Cairo. Eamon was in the UK. During the break, I double-checked online. Cairo used Type C and F sockets, not Type G. I spent the next 15 minutes staring at the black screen, questioning whether I'd really seen it. When Eamon's camera came back on, I caught a glimpse again. It was definitely a UK socket. And to cement my suspicion, what happened next made my breath catch. My flat sits beside a busy road, especially at rush hour. It was about 10 past 6 when a car honked its horn. The sound immediately echoed through Eamon's audio. My body stiffened. Surely that was a coincidence. Seconds later, another honk. Again, it echoed through his feed. That's when I realized Eamon was staying somewhere near my flat. For the rest of the call, I forced a poker face. Luckily, it only lasted another 30 minutes. In that time, several more cars honked, and every time I heard them twice. As soon as the call ended, I sprinted to the window overlooking the street. I scanned every building's window, heart hammering. I couldn't see anyone, but then I realized the obvious answer. A small hotel sat across the street. I passed it every day on my way into town. That must be where he was. It had to be. Seconds later, my girlfriend came home from work. I hadn't mentioned her before because she hadn't been relevant to the story, but as she poked her head in, she could see something was wrong. I told her everything. She already knew about the plane ticket, which she'd found weird, but when I told her what I'd seen and heard, her face went pale. "Should we call the police?" she asked. I'd consider it, but what would I say? He hadn't committed a crime. All he'd done was stay in a hotel. As she tried to calm me down, the pieces began to fit together. For 3 weeks, Eamon had planned his route, booked his flights and hotels, all while moving closer to me. The only question was, why? My girlfriend said I was probably overthinking it. Maybe he'd come to surprise me or introduce himself properly. Perhaps it was innocent. That night, I could barely sleep. Eventually, exhaustion took over, but what felt like seconds after drifting off, a faint sound came from the hallway, loud enough to wake me. I gently nudged my girlfriend awake and pressed a finger to my lips. She froze too when she heard it. It was the sound of the front door lock. Somebody was trying to pick it. I jumped out of bed and rushed to the door. I already knew who it was. Anger overtook me. Who did this guy think he was? I peeped through the peephole. Nothing. Maybe I'd misheard. Stress and lack of sleep can play tricks on you, but no. My girlfriend had heard it too. I opened the door and looked both ways down the hallway. If someone was there, they were long gone now. The lock appeared to be untampered with too. I never normally put the bolt locks on, but that night I wasn't taking chances. The next day I was due to call Eamon. My girlfriend initially advised against it and told me I should now call the police. But I told her there was no evidence of a break-in. If we were going to prove it was him, then we would need to prove it on camera. I tried to stay as focused and nonchalant as I could possibly be on our call. Eamon seemed normal, not like a man who had attempted to break in the night prior. I had a burning rage towards him, but I used all my strength to hold back from snapping. That night, my girlfriend and I were ready. I had placed a mounted camera on the other side of the peephole, from the inside of the flat, and I was sitting several feet away from the door in the pitch black. My girlfriend was in bed, though she told me firsthand that she would not get any sleep that night. Neither would I. I had a couple of energy drinks in my system, and I was gripping a thick baseball bat in my hands. If Eamon would dare try and break into my flat again, I would make sure he didn't get another chance to try it. Granted, I was half terrified, but like I said before, rage and anger was firmly holding the other half of my emotions. To my surprise, I would only need to wait an hour past midnight before I began to hear the sound of the lock being tampered with. I waited a few minutes, making sure that the camera captured as much footage as it could. Then I slowly crept over to the door. I left the bolt locks off this time. I wanted to be able to unlock the door and catch him in the act. Whoever it was would swiftly get the bat to the head. That was the idea anyway. As I crept up to the door, my heart began to pound. When I say pound, I mean pound. It felt like it was on a treadmill. My hands began to shake and sweat, and the grip on the bat felt much less secure than it did a mere few seconds ago. I hovered my hand over the lock, mentally psyching myself up to turn it, but my hand wouldn't move. As my heart rate reached what I felt was its maximum speed, the lock tampering stopped, and it turned. You might think that in this moment, I would have sprung to action as I watched the door open, and a figure stood up just a foot in front of me. But I didn't. I just froze. And so did the man. It was a man, I could see that now, and it was definitely Eamon. He looked shocked to see me there, but he never once let out a gasp. He seemed to be in the same state of shock as both of us. But out of the two of us, I unfortunately have to admit, he was the first to snap out of it. He placed a hand to his face, covering what little he could, and searched with his eyes around the room desperately. I took several steps back, trying to control my breathing. I was furious at myself for not acting, but this was all too real now. I knew that if he took one step past me towards my bedroom where my girlfriend was sleeping, I would snap out of the trance. I almost internally begged for him to do that, so my body would remove itself from what comatose state of fear I was currently in. Eamon took 2 single steps into the room and then paused. After a few seconds of fearful silence, he looked around the door and smiled. He grabbed the mounted camera off the peephole and waved it in front of me, still smiling. I'll never forget that look. In that moment, he realized that no matter what happened, he was getting off scot-free with the evidence. Even that wasn't enough to snap me out of it, and before I could utter a single word, he was gone. It took a full minute before I could move my body again. The blood felt like it was returning to my vitals and limbs, and I could finally breathe normally. I didn't even chase after him. I just closed the door and bolted the locks. I want to end this story by telling you that I am ashamed every day of not acting when I came face to face with this man. Every night I play the situation out again and again in my head. The initial confidence, then the fear that followed, and finally the immobilization of my own body. It makes me sick to think I acted like such a pathetic coward. Nothing can prepare you for moments like those. The worst part is that if it happened again, I fear the same outcome might happen. To clarify what happened, and most importantly, why it happened, well, after the event happened that night, me and my girlfriend phoned the police and explained everything. The police visited the hotel across the street and found nobody. Eamon had been confirmed to have already stayed in the hotel, having booked in a few nights prior, and had left the very same night, just minutes after he had broken into our flat. He had not used Eamon as his name. Instead, he had used a very English-sounding name, and had even provided fake ID documentations, which were so well forged that they hadn't even flagged up on the hotel system. Whoever this guy was, he was a pro. I was able to show the police the list of all my bank transfers too, but they weren't able to trace any of the payments. The account had been closed, making it impossible to get any trace. It wasn't until around last week that the police gave us some information that would change everything, almost a year and a half on from the incident. Eamon hadn't left the UK. He had been staying in various hotels, using fake ID after fake ID to remain anonymous. He was getting away with it too. The police had more or less given up on finding him after a year, and he was put to the back of the cold case pile, assuming he had slipped through the cracks and back to his home country of Egypt. But then, Eamon had slipped up. The last hotel he had stayed in, unbeknownst to Eamon, had a daily room cleaning service. The hotel cleaner would knock 3 times at a specific time, and if the guest didn't answer, and granted the door wasn't bolted, they would enter to clean. Well, it just so happens that Eamon was taking a shower at the time the cleaner entered. The cleaner immediately realized that she was probably intruding and went to leave. On her way out, her eye caught a glimpse of something so disturbing, She immediately left the room and reported it to the police. The cleaner had seen the blueprint plans of what could only be described as a sex dungeon laid out on the bed. There were sketches of a room, including various equipment and a figure drawn into several poses, attached and bound. But that wasn't what made her call the police. It was what was beside it. Pictures of a man, taken of them through their window. The man was shirtless in some of them. Others, he was walking around in just a pair of briefs. Some of the pictures were taken of this man in the street, amongst crowds of other people in public spaces. The man did not know he was having his picture taken. This man was me. Hundreds and hundreds of photos of myself, beside a sketch of location that Eamon had seemingly built for me. Suddenly everything made sense when the laptop evidence came out, too. Every single call that me and Eamon had shared was recorded by him. Hundreds and hundreds of screenshots had been taken of me from them. Hundreds had been printed out. During the breaks that Eamon had requested, I could only imagine what he had been doing. When the policeman told me all of this, I struggled to hold back the vomit that was building in my throat. This man had not planned to break into our apartment to cause harm to my girlfriend or to steal anything. He had come there to take me, back to Cairo, back to what he had planned. Why did he not take me that night? I don't know. I really don't. Perhaps he saw the bat and figured I was too much trouble. Maybe he had planned to drug me in my sleep, and me being awake was too much of a wrench in his plans. I don't know why he didn't do anything that night, but I know that I'm grateful he didn't try, because I don't think I'd still be here if he had. My name is Joseph. I'm a 25-year-old living in Wisconsin. I am part of a very close-knit friend group composed of about 7 people. My 2 best friends being Ben and Max. Ben is a lively, dependable guy. Max is a very chill guy. Polite, super empathetic, and a bit anxious at times. Both are super funny. All 3 of us play games once a week together whenever we find an evening open. It's the way we hang out when life gets too busy to see each other in person. It's sort of a comfort zone for all of us. We've been doing things this way for years. In this friend group, it's a known rule that you're not allowed to ask to come into my room. You either barge in or don't come in at all. We've never really shared why, outside of our group. I think I just need to share it somewhere. My friends believe me when I talk about it, which was great at first. After the past 3-ish years, though, I've started to doubt myself and feel awkward keeping it as a rule. I don't know, maybe that's an excuse. Maybe I just want it out there. Around 3 years ago, when I was about to turn 22, I had a free evening after work and texted the group chat to see if Max and Ben were free. At the time, I lived in a suburban duplex apartment. I got normal responses from both of them. We have a unique flavor of stupidity that we throw around when talking. It felt pretty standard at the time when they responded. We started pretty late, around 12 a.m. Our game sessions usually lasted a few hours, and seeing as I had been getting up at 6 a.m. every morning, I was pretty tired and a bit loopy already. We hopped on a game we'd played together probably hundreds of times. The game itself doesn't matter much, just a standard voice chat game you could run around and screw with each other in. Everything for the first couple of hours was very normal, playing on random maps, messing around, moving on to the next one. It was fun as usual. The first instance of something feeling off came when Max and I were separated from Ben and crossing a concrete bridge together. We'd been over this bridge back and forth many times while playing this game in the past. Midway through overwalking it, I heard Max's voice behind me in-game. "Charlie, come over here. Look at this." Seeing as my name is not Charlie, I turned to him and tried to respond comically in my best impression of a Boston accent. "Who be Charlie?" It didn't bother me or anything to be called the wrong name. Not the first time. I just couldn't think of anyone we knew named Charlie. He was looking out over the left side of the bridge. On the right side of this bridge was a giant concrete wall that went up higher than you can realistically climb above. On the left side was a huge, deep cavern with a thick, dark fog in it that made it look infinite. He was staring into it. Ah, whoops. Yeah, sorry, man. But do you see that? I ran up and turned my character to look into the fog with him. I couldn't really see anything. Not really. What are you looking at? There's a little outline of a person down there. It's really dark, but it's closer to the base of the bridge than you'd think, with the fog. I looked down a bit, but searching around I couldn't see anything. We'd played this map tons of times, and already knew most of the odd secrets to find, so I started to wonder if he was messing around. Can you send me a screenshot? But there was no response. I waited a few moments, but his character was just sitting there, suddenly dead quiet. It seemed like he'd actually taken his hands off the keyboard and mouse. Hello? My first thought was that his internet was struggling. I sat there waiting to see if he needed to be invited back in. After about 3 minutes, though, I realized it wasn't his internet. I was able to call him on the phone when his character moved again and turned towards me. Alright, good to go? He said. I was really confused now. Weren't you trying to show me something? Could you send me a screenshot of it? I asked him. Sure, I'll snip it later, but for now let's go meet up with Ben. At this point, I knew he was trying to mess with me. I just ignored it and we ran to Ben. Ben was already inside of one of the buildings nearby messing with makeshift cars he'd put together from random parts scattered around the map. My engineering degree finally coming into play, he said, putting explosives on the front of the car. We drove around in his vehicle for a while and blew up whatever we found lying around. It was a lot of fun. No different than any other night we'd been playing together. One thing that was abnormal, however, was that Max kept going silent and unmoving for a few minutes at a time and didn't say anything. That was not really like him at all. He was anxious about inconveniencing people, so he was pretty clear about when he went AFK. Usually. What do you keep getting up to do, Max? I asked. Yeah, I was wondering the same. Ben chimed. Max's character was running around picking up items, helping my family out with stuff off and on. Why? This was a pretty reasonable explanation. His family all lived really close by, so it was normal that he would get up and help them. Weird that they needed it at 2 a.m. in the morning, though. So we moved on. It was still unusual for him to do it without warning, but I wasn't gonna bug him without a real reason. After another bit of messing around, Max started to get a little quieter. He was still playing, but he didn't really say much. He also seemed like he was distracted by something. His character would stop moving occasionally, even if he was still talking on mic. Like, he was looking away from his monitor. I wasn't the only one to notice, because Ben walked up to him in-game. Everything alright, dude? You've been really distracted today. Yeah, if you need to go help your family, we can finish up playing for tonight. He didn't say anything for a few moments. There's a guy outside on the street that's walked by the street lamp in front of my house like 5 times back and forth. I could hear a bit of anxiety in his voice. That's weird. One of the neighbors? Ben asked. I can't tell. He's moving pretty quickly when he does it. Max responded. I could tell he was watching out his window. What the hell? That's scary. The guy's just standing under it now. What does he look like? Ben asked. He sounded as nervous as I was. Not sure. Early 30s, maybe. He's not one of the neighbors. Be careful, man, I said. It was really unusual for Max to be this scared of something. He is an anxious guy with social situations, but he's pretty strong-willed when it comes to actual danger. I'll be right back. I could hear Max get up away from his computer. Ben and I looked at each other's characters. After a bit of tense silence, Max finally spoke again. He walked away. That was freaky. Glad my window is pretty well covered by the bushes out front. Yeah, that's pretty weird. Might just be an oddball taking a night walk. Ben was trying to be reassuring with this, but we were all a bit anxious. It might have been a bit dramatic to be worried about a random person standing under a street lamp, but it was more about how nervous Max seemed. It was really unusual for him, not to mention how late it was. We played on for a while. We joked around and started to drift back into laughter. This is where things started to freak me out a bit. I got a call from Max on the phone. Hey, can you hear me, Joseph? Yeah, why? But then I realized something. I could hear Max speaking in voice chat. He was running around and talking loudly with Ben. I could hear it clearly, but what he was saying in-game was not what I heard over the phone. Really? I haven't been able to hear either of you for the past 10 minutes. I didn't realize it at first until I hadn't heard either of you speak in a while. My brain sort of froze hearing this. I could actively hear Max talking not 10 feet away from my character. Are you talking in-game right now? No, why? Did you do something to try and fix it? I can't hear you guys at all. I didn't really know what to do here. My heart was speeding up a bit listening to this happen. I muted on my phone and started to talk over voice chat. Hey Max, can you hear me right now? Max's character turned to me. Yeah, loud and clear, boss. This is exactly the response I'd expect from Max to a question like this. He had to be messing with me. I unmuted on the phone. Are you messing with me, man? I am seriously confused right now. I can hear you talking in-game. You even responded to me. What? Are you guys trying to mess with me again? I could hear that this was genuine confusion. I unmuted in voice chat and stayed unmuted on the phone. So you can hear me right now? Both the Max on the phone and the Max in-game gave different responses at the same time. This didn't feel like something Max could have pulled off for a random joke. It was very convincing. I muted in-game again. This started to freak me out. I couldn't logically figure out what could be going on, and it was making me uncomfortable. I kept thinking back to the weird stuff Max was doing while playing. Something about it was bothering me. The Max over the phone was the least likely to be some sort of a hacker, so I decided to talk to him. I can hear you talking in-game. You're talking right now and messing around with Ben. I figured I should just clearly explain to him what's going on. You two need to stop doing stuff like this. It always freaks me out. There was a twinge of laughter in his voice. I could tell he didn't believe me. I'll admit, Ben and I had messed with him a few times, but nothing to this extent. I guess from his perspective, he just had my word to go off of for what was happening. I'm dead serious, Max. I'm not joking. By the sound he made, I sensed he could tell I wasn't screwing with him. Unfortunately, from here on things got more than uncomfortable. I texted Ben to try and let him know what was going on, but didn't get a response. I muted my phone and walked up to him in-game. Hey Ben. His character wasn't moving. I think he got up to do something real quick, I heard Max's character say. I didn't like that I couldn't tell if it was really him or not. Both the Max on the phone and the Max over voice chat sounded exactly like him. I sat there and waited for a while to see if Ben would come back. I heard Max's character speak again. Holy shit, he said. This sounded like he was genuinely startled. It made my heart sink a bit. What? I can't see it clearly on the street, but I think someone's being attacked. I see something in the road, and a girl is screaming. I heard a loud noise that sounded like him getting up from his chair and ripping off his headphones. What is that? What? What? I heard a sudden movement that sounded like he slammed his hands against the desk. His breathing became really loud. He was right next to his mic. It sounded like he was trembling. I think that saw me. It saw me. It looked right at me, Joseph. Ben, someone needs to call the police. My phone isn't in here. It's in the other room. I was just stuttering, trying to think of a response. At this point, I didn't know what to do, because I was on the phone with who I thought was Max already. Ben was still silent. Joseph, please. I don't know if it saw me, and what I just saw, that girl. Joseph, I think it's going to kill me. I have to hide. Tell the police I'm hiding in the... I jumped when I heard a loud crash like a window shattering, followed by the most horrific scream I have ever heard in my life. Max was screaming for help. This was real. There's a difference between a fake scream and someone pleading for their life, and this was real. It made me feel queasy. Max, are you okay? I screamed through my phone. Yeah, I'm fine. Why? What's going on? Max, you were screaming. It's coming from your character. You're being attacked or something. It sounds so real. Please tell me this is a joke. This is too far for me. I would not do that, dude. I'm serious. This is scaring me. Are you both joking with me? I keep telling you no. Not at all. This is too far. I was trembling and didn't know what to do. I held the phone away from my face, turned to my microphone and asked, Max, what happened? There was silence for about 30 seconds. My whole body tensed when, very loudly and clearly, I heard what sounded like someone grabbing the headset and putting it on. I stayed quiet. Someone was breathing very quietly on the other side, and Max's character began to move again. Over the phone, I asked Max whether he was moving or not. No, I'm on the phone across the room from my PC. Something about the air of the situation had changed. I didn't know if I should move my mouse or speak. What was moving the character? Who was I on the phone with? It sounded like Max. Was it? Out of nowhere, Max's character turned and froze, staring straight at my character. After a moment, it ran up to mine, and Max started speaking in-game. Can I come in, Joseph? Can I come in, Joseph? Can I come in, Joseph? It repeated this over and over. It didn't take a breath. The sound was almost like a recording. Then I realized something. I tore off my headphones. I remember feeling every hair stand up across my body. The character was repeating the phrase. I could hear it in my headphones, but removing them, I could still hear it. It wasn't just coming from my headphones. It was muffled, coming from my closet just a few feet behind me. I was unable to speak or move. Something about the noise I made caused Max to sound panicked. Dude, what's wrong? Are you crying? Something is in my room. I could barely get the words out. Max said he was going to call the police, which made me panic even more. I would be alone with this thing while he was on the phone. No, Max, please stay on the phone. It's here. It's in my closet. I'm terrified. What do you mean it? Wait, no, just stay quiet. I'll stay. Don't worry, man. I'm here. I'll message the group chat and tell someone to call the police to your house. I sat there silently for far too long, shaking. I could still hear the muffled words coming from my closet. Not once did it pause or slow down. It sounded like Max, but I knew it wasn't. I couldn't tell if it sounded excited or distressed. Its voice was getting shakier with each passing repeat. My heart was going so fast I thought I was starting to have a heart attack. I wasn't even trying to figure out what this was anymore. I wanted out of there. But the door out of my room was on the other side of the closet. Okay, Joseph, Mary is calling the police. Just stay put and quiet. I'm also getting in my car to drive over there to you. I'll tell the others to meet me there too. I tapped my phone in an attempt to acknowledge him. Suddenly, the repeating voice stopped. I was petrified to think it may have heard me. The tap was so quiet. I don't know how anyone would be able to hear it, especially from the other side of a closed closet door. I'd also spoken a moment ago. Why did it react this time? Then it started up again, repeating. Whatever it was listening for movement. Despite this, I decided to try to get past the door. The window behind me would be loud, so it wasn't an option. I took very slow steps, trying my best not to creak the wooden floorboards beneath the carpet. I got to right before the closed closet door. I could hear it clearly, deep in the lower part of the closet. It wasn't whispering, and now that I was closer to it, I could hear something else, very quietly and softly, in between repeats. I could hear what sounded like tapping on the door. It was almost as if it was trying to knock. I did not want to step in front of that door. Every part of me was resisting. The moment I put my foot in front of the closet door, the voice stopped. I have never experienced heightened senses like I did at that moment. The silence felt so loud it hurt. My skin felt like it was burning horribly on the side closest to the closet, in what I assume was bated anticipation of something opening the door. I had to stop myself from screaming when the door shook violently with 3 consecutive hits. It was knocking again, but much more forcefully now. This time it was directly next to my head on the other side of the closet door. The knocking was followed by the repeating phrase, starting back up again. It sounded faster, more frantic. It almost sounded like it was on the verge of screaming. It was very clearly as close to the door as possible. I wanted to run so badly. With every step forward, the voice followed me, inches away from my ear on the other side. It obviously knew I was there, so I just gave in to my fear and sprinted. I got to my bedroom door and started to open it. My skin felt like it was still on fire from the fear. I heard something violently turn my closet doorknob behind me and push it open with immense force. I did not wait or look. I ripped open my door and flung myself through, slamming it behind me, and sprinted into the living room. I don't remember what I said to Max at that point over my phone. Apparently he could hear over the phone what I'd been hearing once I'd gotten close enough to the closet. I could tell he was rushing to get into his car. Watching, nothing came out of my room. Nothing even touched the door. It was just pure silence. I kept listening, but nothing made a sound. Waiting there in silence was horrible. I began wondering if it entered some other part of the house, but for some reason I had a strong feeling in the pit of my stomach. If I took my eyes away from the door, that thing would know. I could feel it. It was still waiting, watching me for the moment I stopped looking. I don't even know if I blinked. After an eternity, I could hear the police sirens. They arrived and found me trembling in the corner of the living room. I don't remember much during this, at least accurately, but I know they searched the home and the room thoroughly. Max and the others arrived one by one not too shortly after. I had no proof of what was going on, but the police believed something had happened because of how horrified I was. Unfortunately, they suspected it was a bad drug trip of some kind. Granted, that is not only the more reasonable explanation, but is also not uncommon here. My friends and parents testified that I was not a user of drugs of any kind, so I didn't have to get a drug test, but I get the feeling the officers used that as their explanation. My friends and I did our own research of the house after the fact. My friends are overprotective of each other, so it was hard to convince them not to. We ended up finding a few things. We also found that a number of the clothes I had in the closet were covered in what looked like wet ash, specifically the bottom of my hanging shirts and jackets. It was like whatever was crouched under them was covered in it. The same substance was scraped across the door from where it had followed me. It smelled horrible. I don't even know what I'd compare it to. It just smelled rotten, like death. Then what made us leave immediately after was the fact that my closet door was still open, but my window was closed. That thing never left my room. I don't know how long it was waiting in my closet, but I didn't want to assume it could just phase through walls. I'd been in my room all day. I didn't feel comfortable assuming the thing had just vanished off somewhere. Instead, we left immediately, and I stayed with Max for a month while I moved apartments. I feel terrible about this, but I hired movers to transport everything. I didn't want to go back there. I also warned the owner of what had happened, and, as I expected, they didn't really seem to believe me. I don't blame them. It's honestly difficult for me to figure out what really happened in that situation. there's a few more things. These two bothered me more than all the others. Firstly, Ben hadn't played with us at all that night. He showed us, and he hadn't even received the text I sent, nor Max's response. Max and I both showed him that he'd responded to the group chat. He assured us he never even knew we were playing that night. So, even beyond whatever it was imitating Max, it also imitated Ben from the start. Finally, something far worse came up in the next few days. This is what assured me beyond anything else. This was not a hallucination. In Max's neighborhood, a woman was found mutilated in a field that lined the streets in front of Max's house a few days after all of this happened. No information was put forward to the public other than her name. It was one of Max's neighbors, one he'd never spoken to, but a woman he'd seen many times. She was dead. Whatever was speaking to me as Max wasn't just making things up. It had killed that woman, and told it to me as if Max was watching it happen. I've wondered many times if it was really happening in front of Max's house, while I was on the phone with him. I burned the clothes that had the ash on them out in a field as soon as I got them from the movers. I didn't want anything to sit remaining from this. Ever since that night, we've depended more heavily on in-person hangouts. The anxiety has dissipated, as nothing's happened since then. It almost feels like a dream. If it weren't for Max and the experience with Ben, I'd have probably been able to say it was a bad nightmare or something. I don't know if that would be better or worse. I'm not looking for anyone to believe me. I suppose I wanted closure of some kind, if something like that is out there. It makes me wonder what else we don't know about in our daily lives. It scares me. How often do we interact with people we consider friends and family without realizing they're a cheap imitation? That thought runs across my mind every time I have a sentimental conversation with a friend over the phone, or think of a good memory with a person I love, where we weren't face to face. Someone getting my name wrong sends me so much anxiety. If I couldn't see them in these memories, was it them? Were they really there? For my own sanity, I have chosen to try and believe they were. However, I have a feeling I will never have a way of really convincing myself it's true. My sister Maya loves plushies and dolls. She collects them from everywhere. Garage sales, thrift stores, vacations, and random stores she finds online. Her bedroom shelves are crowded with soft faces and glassy eyes staring out from every corner. A few of them, though, are different. Not broken exactly, but wrong. My brother Jake calls them haunted. The story is about one of them, a furby named Bub. We didn't find Bub in a dusty box or a haunted attic. He came from a regular toy store in the mall, brand new and perfectly wrapped. His fur was spotless, his plastic eyes bright, his box untouched. Maya loved him instantly. I liked him too, even though something about him made me uneasy. Jake hated him from the moment he saw him. He said Bub's eyes followed him around the room. At first I thought Jake was exaggerating. Then I started to notice things. The way Bub's gaze seemed to catch the light even when the room was dark. The faint, broken whirring sound that came from him at night. Sometimes when the house was quiet, I could swear I heard a whisper from Maya's room. A faint, mechanical voice. Bub stayed in Maya's room with her other plushies, so it wasn't unusual when she came home one day holding something new. She had found a porcelain doll at a garage sale she visited with our mom. The doll had pale skin, a blue dress trimmed with lace, and deep green glass eyes. I found her at number 66, Maya said proudly. Her name is Clara. From the moment Clara entered the house, Bub went quiet. Completely silent. No clicks, no whirs, no whispers. I didn't think much of it at first, but later I realized that something in the air had changed. When I went into Maya's room one evening to borrow a notebook, I passed by Bub on the shelf. He was staring at the door, and when I reached for the notebook, a low, garbled whisper came from him, too faint to understand. It was probably my imagination, but it sounded like, "Hungry. Feed me." Maya started carrying Clara everywhere. She talked to her constantly, like the doll was whispering back. Within a week, Maya looked different. She had grown pale, her cheeks hollow, her hair thinner. She barely ate, barely slept. Jake and I tried to talk to our parents, but they laughed it off. "She's just being creative," Mom said. I didn't think creativity made someone look like they were fading away. One night, I decided to get rid of Clara myself. The moonlight was weak when I slipped into Maya's room. Everything was still. Her dolls watched from the shelves, and Bub's eyes glimmered faintly from the dresser. As I crept toward the bed, I could have sworn one of his eyes flickered closed, like a wink. Clara lay beside Maya, her green eyes half open, only human. Her hair seemed thicker than before, her cheeks faintly pink, her lips slightly parted in what almost looked like a smile. When I picked her up, her body was ice cold. The chill ran down my arms. I didn't stop to think. I just rushed outside and threw her into the trash bin. That was supposed to be the end of it. The next morning, Maya walked downstairs with Clara in her arms. The doll looked newer than ever, her hair shiny, her eyes bright. Maya looked exhausted, but she was smiling. When I met Clara's gaze, I thought I saw amusement there, a kind of quiet, knowing victory. A week later, our parents went away for their anniversary. It was just the three of us, Jake, Maya, and me, left in the house with a freezer full of pizza. That night, the table felt heavy with silence. Maya sat opposite me, pale and distant, with Clara perched neatly on her lap. Every so often, Maya's hand twitched, as though someone were tugging invisible strings. "Do you want a bite, Clara?" Maya asked softly. Jake sighed. "Oh my God, Maya, it's a doll. It doesn't eat pizza. Can you stop being weird?" Maya looked up. Her eyes didn't look brown anymore. They were cloudy with a faint greenish tint. "Clara says you shouldn't talk to me like that," she said, "or you'll get punished." Jake laughed, but it was uneasy. "Okay, that's enough." Her voice changed then. It deepened, hollow and wrong. "You don't take us seriously." Before I could move, Maya grabbed the steak knife beside her plate and drove it into Jake's hand. He screamed, jerking back as the lights flickered out, plunging the room into darkness. When they blinked on again, Jake was clutching his bleeding hand, and Maya was already running upstairs. The doll clutched tight against her chest. I remember those green eyes glinting as she turned the corner. I didn't think. I just followed. Maya's bedroom door slammed shut behind me as I entered. The curtains were drawn, the air cold. I could hear her breathing somewhere in the dark. I fumbled for the light switch, terrified of what I might see. When the lights came on, Maya was sitting on the floor, her back to me. Clara's arms were wrapped around her neck like a child's embrace. The doll's head turned slowly toward me, her lips curling into a painted smile. "Come play with me, Noah," she said. Her voice wasn't Maya's, or anyone's. It was flat, distorted, like a recording of a broken radio. "Leave her alone," I shouted, my voice shaking. Clara tilted her head. "I feel no guilt," she whispered. "I feed on your family in plain sight." Her hands uncurled from Maya's shoulders as she lowered herself on the ground. Slowly she made her way over to me and stretched her hand toward me, fingers stiff and pale. Then another voice broke the silence. "Stop." It came from the dresser. Bub's eyes were glowing a deep red. His tiny plastic beak opened, and a low rumble filled the room. "Who are you?" Clara hissed. "I am your master," Bub said. His voice was layered and mechanical, but heavy with authority. "Bow down to me." Clara screamed, a sound that rattled the walls. Her porcelain face cracked down the middle. Smoke rose from her chest as she twisted and convulsed. "You can't stop me," she shrieked. Bub's eyes flared brighter. "Bow," he said, "or burn." Clara's body splintered, then melted, collapsing into a puddle of wax and ash. Her last cry was a high, thin wail that shattered the lamp beside Maya's bed. Then silence. Bub's head turned toward me, his eyes dimmed to normal. "Delicious," he whispered. And then he was still. We told the police it was an accident, that Jake had stabbed himself while goofing around. They believed us. Maya doesn't remember what happened that night, and she's healthier now. Her color has returned. Her laughter, too. Clara is gone, reduced to a blackened stain on the floorboards. But sometimes I catch Bub watching me from the dresser, his plastic face blank, his eyes a little too bright. I know better now than to underestimate him, because one spring morning I woke to a familiar sound drifting through the vent between our rooms, a soft electronic chirp, followed by a whisper that froze me where I lay. "Hungry. Feed me." I don't usually post stuff like this. I don't even use Reddit much except to scroll when I can't sleep. But lately I've been waking up around 3 or 4 in the morning, just knowing something's outside my window. So maybe writing it out will help. Maybe someone here has gone through something like this. This all started last winter, around mid-December. My cousin Nate had this idea to go stay at his family's old hunting cabin, up by Lake Superior. His dad built it in the late 80s, but nobody had used it in years. He said it would be a digital detox weekend. No internet, barely any phone use. We only brought our phones for emergencies. Just a wood stove, some beer, and a couple days of peace and quiet. I was hesitant because the timing sucked. Roads were icy, snowstorms every few days. But Nate wouldn't shut up about it. Said he needed to clear his head after his breakup, and that I owed him one for missing his birthday. So I said screw it. The drive up was worse than either of us expected. The last few miles were winding forest road. Barely plowed, no cell service. Snow was falling in thick sheets, and the trees looked like black walls on both sides. Every now and then we'd see a deer dart through the headlights and vanish into the dark, and both of us would flinch. By the time we got to the cabin, it was almost 9 p.m. The place was buried halfway up the porch in snow. No footprints, no tire tracks, just untouched white. Inside smelled like damp wood and animal piss. The first thing we noticed was the cold. Not regular cold. It felt wrong somehow. Heavier. Like it didn't belong inside. We got the generator going. Thank God it still worked. And the little place started to warm up. Nate cracked a beer, joked about how we were real mountain men now. We played a few hands of cards, made some soup on the propane stove, and eventually passed out on the fold-out couch. I don't know what time it was when I woke up. The generator had stopped. Everything was quiet. Not peaceful quiet. Dead quiet. Like the air itself had stopped moving. I remember sitting up and instantly getting this feeling that something was wrong. I couldn't explain it. My body just knew. When I went outside to restart the generator, my flashlight caught something in the snow. A trail of prints circling the cabin. Barefoot, human-shaped but off somehow. The toes were longer, the stride uneven, like whoever made them had been dragging one leg. They went all the way around the cabin and disappeared into the woods. I woke Nate up. He stumbled outside with me, half asleep, swearing I was overreacting, until he saw them himself. He crouched down to look closer, and I swear I saw his breath catch when he realized how deep they went, like whoever made them weighed a lot. We locked the doors, piled some firewood in front of the entrance, and tried to pretend it was fine. We barely slept. The next morning the snow had stopped, but the air felt heavier. There was this strange smell. Not quite rot, not quite metal, but sharp enough to burn in your nose. We ate a quick breakfast and decided to leave early, but when we went outside, the truck wouldn't start. The battery wasn't just dead, it was gone, like it had been pulled out cleanly. The weirdest part? The hood wasn't even damaged. The latch was still locked, like something had just lifted it open. There were drag marks in the snow leading off toward the trees. He grabbed a hatchet from the shed and said he was going to follow the tracks. Just a little way. I told him not to, that we should stay put until someone found us, but he was stubborn like that. He didn't come back. I waited for maybe 20 minutes before I went after him. There were new prints now, his mixed with the others. I followed them about 20 yards before the trees got thicker and the light dimmed. Then I noticed the smell again, stronger this time. Something was hanging from a branch ahead, part of Nate's flannel sleeve, torn clean off, and below it, the snow was soaked dark. At least, it looked like blood. Later, when the snow melted and refroze, it was gone. Maybe that's why the search team didn't find any sign of it, but in that moment, it was enough to make me freeze in place. That's when I heard him, or at least, I thought it was him. He said my name, soft at first, then louder. It sounded like it was coming from deeper in the woods, but the echo didn't sound right. It was like the voice was inside my head instead of around me. Nate had shouted my name earlier when he left, so at first I thought maybe he was still close. I called back, but there was only silence. Then I saw it. It was standing between two trees, hunched but still taller than any person should be. Its skin was stretched tight, grayish, and thin enough to show ribs. The head looked human at first, but the jaw was too long, like it had been broken and never healed. When it opened its mouth, I could see black around its gums, and something wet and red dripping from the corners. It stepped forward, and the sound it made wasn't footsteps. It was more like cracking branches inside the snow. I don't remember running, but I must have. I just remember the feeling of my lungs tearing apart in the cold air, and the moment I saw the road, a narrow stretch of white cutting through the trees. I didn't stop until I hit pavement, maybe 2 miles away. When I finally got to a gas station, I called the sheriff's office. They told me the roads were blocked by fallen trees and they couldn't get a plow up there until the storm cleared. They sent a team 2 days later. Once it was finally passable, they found the cabin. They found the truck. They found Nate's phone, frozen and half buried about a mile from the property. But no Nate. No blood trail, nothing else. They said maybe a bear got him. I didn't argue. That was 8 months ago. I've moved 3 times since then. Different cities, different apartments. I don't tell people why. I don't even tell my family the full story. They think I'm still dealing with trauma and making things up in my head. Maybe they're right. But sometimes I wonder if it followed my scent, or if I brought something back from that place without realizing it. 2 nights ago, I woke up around 3:47 a.m. Someone was whispering my name from the hallway. I live alone. When I finally got the courage to look, the whispering stopped, but right under my bedroom window, on the patch of frozen mud, there were footprints. Barefoot, human-shaped, and just slightly too long, like the same ones from the night in the snow, perfectly preserved, like whatever made them hadn't walked here. It had just appeared. I don't know if I'm losing my mind, but I need to write this somewhere before it gets worse. I live in a small 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. Not quite the city, but not the countryside either. It's one of those complexes with identical beige buildings, a half-empty parking lot, and a chain-link fence separating it from a strip of woods that no one really goes into. The kind of place where people keep to themselves. I've been here for 2 years. It's quiet, which I like. Or at least it was. About 3 weeks ago, I started hearing this weird noise outside my window at night. Not just random noise. It sounded like someone walking. Not heavy footsteps, but slow, dragging ones. Like bare feet on pavement. At first I thought maybe it was one of my neighbors coming home late, or some raccoons going through the trash. But the sound didn't make sense. It would stop right beneath my window, stay there for a few minutes, and then move toward the fence that leads to the woods. After a few nights of that, I started looking out the blinds when I heard it, but I never saw anyone. Until the 5th night. That night, I was up late working on my laptop when I heard it again. Slow, scraping steps on the sidewalk below. I peeked through the blinds. The motion light by the parking lot flicked on, and for a split second I saw a figure standing near the fence. It was tall, too tall and thin, but the proportions were wrong, like someone had been stretched out. I could see its outline in the yellow light. It had long arms that hung lower than they should have, and its head tilted like it was listening. Then the light turned off, and it was gone. I didn't sleep that night. I told my neighbor the next morning, a woman named Danielle who lived here longer than I have. She looked uneasy when I mentioned the woods. She said she's heard weird noises too, especially around 2 or 3 in the morning. Crying sometimes. Could be coyotes, she said, but her voice didn't sound convinced. I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was an animal. I even left my phone recording one night while I slept, just to prove it was nothing. When I played it back the next morning, most of it was silence until about 2:17 a.m. That's when I heard footsteps, then this sound like something whispering, really close to the microphone. It was too quiet to make out, but it almost sounded like my name. The next night, I left my phone recording again, but when I clicked in the morning, the file was corrupted, just static. Things got worse after that. I'd find the motion light by the parking lot on when I woke up, even though it's supposed to turn off automatically. My trash can got knocked over twice. Once when I stepped outside in the morning, I noticed what looked like handprints on my window. Not fingerprints. Full, flat palms. Too long. The skin had left smudges, like it was damp. I tried calling the building manager, but he brushed it off as kids messing around. Then about a week ago, I got home from work and found something sitting outside my door. A dead rabbit. Its body looked twisted, like its neck had been turned completely around. I didn't even touch it. I called maintenance, but when they came by, the body was gone. That night I heard someone knock on my door around midnight. 3 slow knocks. When I looked through the peephole, no one was there, but I could hear breathing. It was deep and uneven, like someone trying to imitate what breathing should sound like. After about 30 seconds, it stopped. I didn't sleep again that night either. The next morning, I noticed muddy footprints leading from the front door to the sidewalk. Bare feet, large ones, with toes that looked too long. Danielle moved out 2 days later. She didn't even tell anyone, just packed her car and left. I don't know what's happening here. Last night was the worst. Around 2:30 a.m., I woke up because I heard something tapping on my bedroom window. I live on the 2nd floor, so there shouldn't be anything tapping on my window. When I looked, I saw a face pressed against the glass. It was pale, almost gray, and the eyes were too big. The mouth was open, moving like it was trying to form words, but no sound came out. Then, this part still makes my stomach turn. I realized it looked like me. The same eyes, the same hair, but wrong, like someone wearing my face but not knowing how to use it. I fell backwards, hit the nightstand, and by the time I looked again, it was gone. I haven't told anyone else yet. I don't even know how to explain it. But tonight, as I'm typing this, I can hear it again. The dragging footsteps outside, moving up and down the sidewalk. Every few minutes it stops right below my window. And I swear, I just heard it whisper my name. When my wife Sarah and I bought the house, it felt like a dream come true. Quiet neighborhood, plenty of trees, and a big backyard with a rusted, overgrown fence running along the far edge. The realtor said the forest behind it was undeveloped county land. No trails, no utilities, no trespassing. She mentioned the fence was probably an old property divider. But it wasn't just a fence. It was nearly 8 feet tall, made of rusted iron, with twisted, sharp points along the top, like it was built to keep something in, not out. Right in the center, hidden behind vines and moss, was a gate, welded shut with thick seams of metal and rust. On the inside of the gate, our side, someone had carved a single word into the metal. Stay. At first we thought it was some strange leftover from the previous owners. Maybe they were paranoid. Maybe they had kids and wanted to scare them from wandering into the woods. Now I think they were trying to warn us. The dog noticed it first. Bear is usually friendly, dumb as a rock, but loyal. After we moved in, he refused to go near the fence, wouldn't even step into the backyard. He'd stand at the sliding door, growling softly, tail low, ears pinned. Then the dream started. Sarah said she kept dreaming about the woods, dense black trees packed tighter than they should be. She said she heard things walking just out of sight, shapes moving between the trunks. I shrugged it off, told her it was stress. New house, new environment, normal adjustment stuff. Then I started having the same dreams, and then it got worse. One night last week, I woke up at exactly 3:17 a.m. Not from a noise, not from a nightmare. I just knew I had to wake up. The house was silent. Even Bear wasn't snoring. I got up and looked out the back window. There, standing inside the fence, on the other side of the welded gate. I couldn't see much, just a tall silhouette. Pale, almost white, barely human-shaped. It didn't move, didn't run when I turned on the porch light. It just raised a long, thin arm and pointed at me. I blinked. It was gone. The next morning, I found bare footprints in the dew. Human-looking, but wrong. Toes too long, arches too low. They led from the gate, across the backyard, and stopped right beneath our bedroom window. That night, Sarah said I was talking in my sleep. Not mumbling, whispering. She said I kept repeating the same phrase over and over. Let me back in. I remember now. Let me back in. I don't remember any of it, but she swears she saw me get up around 2 a.m., unlock the back door, and stand by the fence, just staring. She said I whispered something to the gate, and something whispered back. Last night was the worst. I woke to Sarah shaking me, tears in her eyes. The gate, she said. Listen. I held my breath. In the silence I heard it. Metal groaning. A slow, dragging, shrieking noise. Rusted hinges straining. We ran to the window. The gate was open, bent inward like something had forced its way through the welds. I grabbed a flashlight and went out barefoot, heart pounding. The air near the gate was colder, still, like the woods themselves were watching. And that's when I saw it. The word on the gate, stay, was gone, scratched over with deep, jagged gouges. Now it said, welcome home. I don't know what I did. I don't know what's calling to me from those woods, but something is. Something that remembers me, and I think I'm starting to remember it too. It's hard to say when it started. I graduated college a year ago now, moved to a new city far from home, started trying to do the whole grad school thing by myself. It was a lot at first, but after almost a year in, I felt like I was getting it all figured out. After my first few weeks here, though, I started feeling really, really off. And I don't mean mentally. I had headaches, chest pains, nausea, the whole deal. At the time, I was scheduling doctor's appointments to figure it out. I know now it was a precursor of my new condition. I was undergoing some kind of change that I didn't understand. At some point in the last 2 months, my body decided to fall apart. The first to go were my molars. You know that powdery taste that fills your mouth when the dentist drills into your teeth? That was on my tongue for 3 weeks. I was absent-mindedly smacking my lips for a month, trying to abate the calcium's tang, completely oblivious to what was coming. It was annoying, but it didn't seem dangerous at the time. I figured I could schedule another checkup once my new job's health insurance kicked in. That plan went out the window when I woke up and felt soggy clumps of teeth sloughing into the back of my half-awake throat. I shot upright, gagging and spitting. My tongue desperately felt along my teeth for the cause, and stopped once it reached the right first and second molars. There was still material there, but it wasn't bone. The closest thing I can think of to describe it is a sandcastle at high tide. There was a shape, some structure, but with every second, I could feel grains of myself slipping away to be digested by my own saliva. I wasn't scared yet, just confused. I was in shock, my brain refusing to put together what was happening. The fear came when I realized I couldn't feel it. Parts of my teeth were separating from the roots, and I can't feel it at all. My fingers dug into my mouth before I could tell them to, clawing for some kind of information. The only thing that came was a delicate squish, marrow spreading over my hand like warm butter. Naturally, I screamed. I screamed for a while. It took my voice giving out for me to even remember. I could move. I thought of my bathroom mirror. If I could just see what I was feeling, maybe I could figure out a normal explanation. I threw myself out of bed, but didn't find the solid footing of a functional step. Instead, my calf sunk into my ankle with a muted crunch. I barely had time to register my heel's liquidation before I hit the ground. My head bounced off the floor, more sticky resin seeping from my mouth into the carpet. My eyes instinctively moved to see what had happened. My left foot was mangled. It looked like the bones of my heel had vanished, leaving nothing to stop the shin from sliding into its position. Despite the damage, my toes could still wiggle. I could feel them just as I had my entire life. Moreover, just like with my teeth, pain wouldn't come. My head throbbed from the impact of the fall, but the foot felt perfectly fine. I leaned on my bed and began to lift myself up, being careful not to put any weight on my left side. I managed to find my balance, and attempted to limp toward the bathroom. I was surprised to find the foot could still support my weight if I was on my toes. But walking flat felt, I don't know, incorrect. Half sturdy limb and half waterbed, I guess. With each step, I felt whatever was left of my tarsals sloshing through whatever was left of the muscle, creeping into the structurally sound portions of my body. Finally, I made it to the mirror. If I hadn't shouted my voice apart earlier, I would have surely lost it then. Distracted by my own disintegration, I had completely ignored the lack of sensation in my right ear. While it remained firmly attached, The shape of it dragged down the side of my face. I hesitantly reached to touch it, and flinched as my fingers sunk into the deflated cartilage. My thoughts were brought back to my teeth. I leaned my head back and pulled my cheek to the side. My gums were slathered with the gritty, whitish substance. I closed my mouth tightly and sucked on my teeth in an attempt to wipe the slime away. I carefully opened up again. I prodded at where the molars had been rotted, and to my horror, the gums caved in as well. I heard it as much as I felt it. A soft, mushy squish. I didn't even have to call an ambulance. The neighbors apparently thought I was being stabbed to death with how loud I was shouting. The officer sped me to the hospital after seeing the state I was in. I spent 6 days in the emergency room. Needless to say, the doctors had the same amount of information I did. Latent genetic disorder was tossed around. I heard cancerous mutation at one point. They couldn't take a blood test because, in their words, my circulatory system had become irregularly located. They took some x-rays, but every time they would come out blurred, as if the machine itself was shaking from what it was looking at. Query after query, guess after clueless guess. They weren't able to help, but thought I was too fascinating to go unstudied. I got shipped from the ER across state lines to some specialty lab. The only possession I got to bring with me was my laptop, which would be nice if I couldn't see them jotting down notes as I type this. That was 2 weeks ago. At that point, if I have the timeline right, my left pinky, right cheekbone, left leg up to the knee, right leg halfway up the femur, one floating rib, and even more of my teeth had gelatinated, as they started calling it. I was already a rotten, wasting thing composed of my own dissolving matter, just waiting to pop. I couldn't imagine it getting worse, and yet here I am, much, much worse. At least I might get a condition named after me. It's hard to describe the state I'm in now. Most of my fingers still work, but the palms they're affixed to lie flaccid and motionless. Did you know your shoulder blades are the only bones in your body that aren't directly joined to another? They're connected to the shoulder through flexible tendons that can stretch according to the desired movement. That's why it slides across your back freely when you move your arm. That's also why I felt them slip down my ribs. One smashed through my pelvis, which itself was already half gone. 2 days later, the other one clattered across my ribs as it fell, knocking 2 loose, before getting stuck in my right butt cheek and fading completely. Still no pain, just less mobility. All I'm able to do now is type, slowly type out what's happening to me. Any day now my skull will evaporate, or maybe my vertebrae. I'm not a religious man, but when my jaw began to swing, I started praying. I think of 2 prayers when I wake up and repeat them when I go to bed. I invoke whatever creator allowed this to happen to end it as soon as possible. Second, I beg to feel some kind of pain when it happens. Any hint as to what's become of my body. I clean houses for a living. Well, not the nice kind. The places I get sent to are the ones that sit in real estate market for years. Speak of hollowed homes, drug dens, and old estates nobody wants to touch. My boss likes to call them distressed properties. He always gives me the same routine when he hands me over the keys. Don't overthink what you see. Just clean enough to make the place presentable. This time was slightly different. He added something new. And don't worry about any, well, funny markings in this one. That phrasing stuck in my head all morning. Funny markings. The house was way past the county line. A 3-story Victorian that was half swallowed by the trees along the side of the road. Every window had a shadow behind it. Inside, the air smelled like wet dust and mold. Why would anyone ever want to buy this place? Regardless, I worked my way up floor by floor, trying not to look too long at anything. Every surface felt sticky, like it remembered being touched. The wallpaper upstairs was peeling in spirals. There were these faint, reddish smears underneath it. When I reached the attic, I finally understood what my boss meant. The room was large and empty, but just in the center of the spoiled wooden floorboards, there was a dark imprint, and not exactly a stain. It had edges like a silhouette. You could see the curve of a head, shoulders, and knees forced straight. It was a person, or what was left of one, as if they had lain there for a very, very long time and their skin had melted into the wood. I tried to ignore it at first, but the longer I stood there, the heavier the air got. There was no smell at first, just this metallic taste that coated my tongue. I set up my bucket, poured bleach, and started scrubbing hard, but with an essence of pervasive reluctance that couldn't leave me. The wood hissed. I thought maybe it was moisture reacting with the cleaner, but then the stain bubbled. Little white blisters had formed along the outline of the ribs, popping with a soft crackle. The smell hit. It wasn't bleach anymore, but something sour like when you open a drain trap that hasn't been touched in like years. I gagged. My eyes began to burn. It felt like the fumes were crawling under my skin. My arms went weak, and a paralyzing pressure started building behind my jaw, like I was about to vomit, but nothing came up. The outline of the body didn't fade. Disgusted, I dropped the brush. I don't even remember climbing down the ladder. 1 second I was on my knees in the attic, and the next I was in the hallway, shaking like a rabid dog. My heartbeat was so loud it felt like its pulse filled the whole house. The bathroom was the only place with any running water, so I went there to wash the bleach off my arms. The sink was cracked but functional. The water came out cloudy at first but gradually cleared. When I looked in the mirror, my face was gray. My eyes had tiny red capillaries spidering from the corners. My skin began to itch. It broke into reddish, painful blisters. And when I rubbed at my forearm, it felt warmer than usual. I leaned over the sink to splash water on my face, and that's when the drain gurgled. It burped up a bubble the size of a golf ball. It popped, and the smell was... I don't even know how to describe it. Rotten flesh? Something black oozed up through the drain. Slow, thick, clotted. It wasn't sewage. It was viscous, like congealed blood. I backed up, and that's when I noticed the tub. The bottom was ringed with brown. There was some water, but it wasn't reflecting any of the ceiling. It looked deep, like it went somewhere. Floating in the center was a tangle of something stringy hair, maybe. But there were other bits caught in it, pale chunks with edges that glistened, something bone-colored, something that had teeth. A skull flattened through its scalp, battered to the surface like ground meat. I didn't check twice. I was too shocked to scream. I couldn't help but instinctively run away. I was done with this place. I left everything, the supplies, the keys, the ladder, and drove straight home. I didn't even call my boss until the next morning, and when I did, he picked up on the first ring. When I told him what I'd seen, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Good God, you shouldn't have stayed that long. Save yourself." Before I could even respond, he hung up. I went to look up the address later that night. No listing, no record, nothing. Hours later, I worsened. I could smell bleach underneath my skin, and something else. Something sodden. Acrid sweet, like fruit going bad in the walls. The blisters now begin to forage my entire body, and a brown ooze leaks from my shaking fingertips. I don't know what this is, and I fear it has claimed me for good. My thoughts keep drifting back to that place, like something inside me has been tethered there. I don't feel like resting anymore. Maybe the only way to accept peace is to return, to let the attic have me. When I look back, I can still smell the candle wax. Brandon's girlfriend, Kate, had this habit of lighting 5 different scents at once. Like the mix of vanilla, pine, and burnt sugar could disguise the fact that her apartment always felt too still. My girlfriend, Leela, teased her for it while the 4 of us sat around the coffee table eating takeout noodles and half watching a movie while playing Uno. It was supposed to be a normal night. I remember thinking how quiet the neighborhood was, the kind of quiet that makes you hear the hum of the refrigerator and the soft static between words. Brandon's place sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, one of those split-level rentals with a narrow porch and a single security light that never stayed on. We just started talking about weekend plans when the knock came. 3 sharp raps. Not hurried, not tentative. Confident. Brandon furrowed, half rising from the couch. Expecting anyone? No, I said before I could stop myself. It wasn't my house, but the sound felt directed at me. The knock came again. Same rhythm, a beat of stillness between each hit. Kate looked at the door, then at Brandon. Probably a delivery mix-up. But Brandon wasn't moving. Neither was I. There was something about the cadence that made my stomach tighten. Relax, Leela said, nudging me. I'll check. Before I could tell her not to, she padded across the living room and flipped on the porch light. It flickered once, then steadied. I caught a glimpse through the window, a shadow on the other side of the frosted glass. Same height as me. Leela opened the door halfway, then she froze. Brandon? She said quietly. You might want to come here. He joined her at the entryway, confusion flickering over his face. Kate leaned over the back of the couch, but I was already standing. I don't know what I expected. Maybe a prank, a neighbor. When I reached the door, the air felt thinner. The man outside looked exactly like me. Same jacket, same haircut, same tired circles under his eyes. Even the way he held his shoulders, slightly turned like he wasn't sure whether to step forward or back. It was mine. He smiled when he saw me. Hey, he said, voice perfectly calm. Why'd you change the locks? For a second, nobody said anything. My mind searched for an answer that made sense. Twin, look-alike, some kind of joke? Brandon muttered, What the hell? The man outside tilted his head. You going to let me in? It's freezing. The breath left my lungs. Who are you? He blinked, surprised by the question. Funny, you tell me. I slammed the door before he could take another step. The sound echoed through the living room. Kate yelped. Leela grabbed my arm. What the hell, Matt? There's somebody out there pretending to be me. Brandon turned the deadbolt. Okay, that's insane. Maybe he just looks like you. No, I said. You saw him. It's not possible. From the porch came 3 more knocks. Slower this time. Leela whispered. What if it's a prank? What's that thing called? Deep fake or something? I shook my head. He had my clothes. He even talked like me. I don't think my parents would be able to tell. The knock stopped. Brandon exhaled shakily. I'm calling the cops. He grabbed his phone and started dialing. While he talked to the dispatcher, the rest of us stood there listening. No footsteps, no voice, just that quiet house breathing around us. When he hung up, he said, They're sending a car. We waited. 10 minutes, 15. Leela peeked through the side window once but flinched back immediately. He's still there. I forced myself to look. Through the glass, My own face stared back at me. He was smiling faintly, like he found something funny. Then he raised his hand and knocked again. Softer, steady, patient. Brandon muttered, Jesus Christ. When the police arrived, 2 officers, they found nothing. The porch was empty. The night air looked untouched, like it had been that way all along. One officer asked if I'd been drinking. I told him no. He said they'd patrol the area, told us to lock up, and left. We tried to laugh it off after that, but no one really could. Brandon suggested we all crash there for the night, just in case. Around midnight, Kate went to bed. Leela lay curled against me on the couch, pretending to sleep. Brandon stayed up, staring at the dark TV screen. That's when I heard it again. A single knock from the back door. Brandon looked at me like maybe I'd imagined it. Then we both heard the second one. 3 taps, the same slow rhythm. We crept into the kitchen. The small window above the sink looked out over the backyard. Porch light off, darkness thick as velvet. I whispered, "Don't." Brandon ignored me and flicked the light switch. The bulb hummed to life, yellow and weak, casting a cone of light over the glass door. I was standing outside again. Same jacket, same posture, except now there was something wrong with the way I smiled. It was too wide. We lifted a hand and rested it flat against the glass. The shape of it matched mine perfectly. Brandon hissed. How is he doing that? I wanted to answer, but my mouth felt dry. The thing outside leaned closer to the glass, forehead pressing gently until condensation fogged the pane. Then he whispered something. We couldn't hear through the door, but I knew the shape of the words. He mouthed, "Let me in." Brandon yanked the blinds closed. "Nope, we're done. We're calling again." But before he could reach for his phone, the kitchen light flickered and went out. The power didn't so much go out as hesitate. The hum of the fridge died, the clock on the stove blinked off, and the air itself seemed to thicken. I could hear Brandon's breath beside me, shallow and fast. Then came the soft drag of a hand sliding down the other side of the glass door. We backed into the hallway. Leela appeared, rubbing her eyes. What's happening? I started to answer, but a shape moved past the curtain window. A shadow, my own, brushed the fabric, the faint outline of a face pressing just close enough for the curtain to twitch. Then it was gone. "Basement," Brandon whispered. "Breaker box." He headed for the stairs. Kate called from the bedroom, voice small, asking if everything was okay. No one answered. I didn't want to go into that dark stairwell, but standing still felt worse. I followed Brandon down, the flashlight on his phone cutting narrow slices of light across the unfinished walls. The switch was already flipped to on. "See?" he said. "Power's fine. Must be..." Something slammed upstairs, hard enough to shake the ceiling dust loose. We bolted up the steps 2 at a time. The kitchen door was open. Cold air poured through the room like water. The curtain flapped against the wall. Kate stood frozen in the hallway, hand over her mouth. "He's inside," she whispered. I saw the trail of wet footprints on the tile before I saw him. Me, standing in the living room doorway. Head tilted slightly, eyes unfocused. He looked like he'd forgotten how to breathe. Brandon grabbed a lamp from the table and held it like a weapon. "Stay back," he said, voice cracking. The thing turned its head toward him, slow as a hinge, and smiled. Not wide this time. Sad. Leela said my name. I don't know which of us she meant. For a heartbeat, everyone was still. Then the thing moved, fast, impossible speed, knocking the lamp aside, sending it clattering. Brandon shouted. Kate screamed. Leela pulled at my arm and we stumbled backward into the hall. I remember flashes, the sound of something heavy falling, glass breaking. Brandon's voice cutting off mid-word, his grunt as he hit the floor. When it was over, the silence was worse than the noise. The power blinked back on. The bulbs buzzed faintly overhead. The air smelled like ozone and sweat. I was standing in the middle of the living room. My hands were shaking. There was something on the floor at my feet, lying still. He looked exactly like me. The police came after Kate called them. I barely remember the sirens, just the questions. Where did the intruder come from? Why did he look like me? What happened to Brandon? I kept saying, I don't know. One of the officers pulled me aside and asked again, slower, like maybe I'd stop lying if he softened his voice. He pointed at the sheet-covered body. You expect me to believe you don't recognize him? I looked at the hand slipping out from under the sheet. Same scar across the knuckle, same little freckle by the wrist. I recognize him. I said, I just don't know which one of us he is. They didn't like that answer. They kept me separated from everyone else for hours. The detective who interviewed me said the neighbors only saw one person through the window, the one who broke the glass. But when they showed me a photo from the scene, something about the angle felt wrong. The face on the floor looked peaceful, almost relieved. Leela wouldn't look at me when they finally let us speak. She just said, they found you standing over him. Over who? I asked. Her voice broke. Over you. That was 2 days ago. I'm home now, waiting to hear if they're going to charge me with anything. They said the body's fingerprints match mine. Same dental records, same blood type. I've tried to remember every second of that night, but the details keep shifting. Sometimes I remember hitting him. Sometimes he hit me. Sometimes I'm the one who ran. Sometimes I'm the one who stayed. When I look in the mirror, the reflection feels a half-second late again. Not enough for anyone else to notice. Just enough for me to feel it. There's a noise I keep hearing at night, like a soft, even knocking somewhere in the walls. 3 times. Pause. 3 times again. Leela hasn't answered my calls. Kate says she's not sleeping, that she's scared of me now. I don't blame her. I catch myself using words I don't remember choosing, standing in rooms without recalling why I walked in. This morning I found something in my jacket pocket that isn't mine, a house key with a blue tag. The kind Brandon uses. I don't know how it got there. The police said the man they found, the other me, had the same key in his pocket too. I keep thinking about what he said through the glass. Let me in. Maybe that's what he was doing. Maybe one of us let the other in. I don't know which side of the door I'm on anymore. This kind of work isn't exactly glamorous, but it pays well. The company had flown me out to this remote stretch of forest to conduct a preliminary geological and topographic survey for a future radio tower installation. The job was scheduled for 4 days. Just 4 days of gathering soil samples, recording data, and creating an elevation map of the area. They dropped me off near a small cabin, originally built for logging crews decades ago. I was surrounded by trees, snow, and whatever wildlife that hadn't migrated south. The weather reports hinted at a snowstorm moving in by the end of the week, and the last thing I wanted was to get caught in the middle of it. The deep snow would make it impossible to do any work. The forest surrounding the cabin was dense, a towering wall of snow-covered pine trees, the kind of place where the quiet becomes deafening. At least, I used to think I liked that kind of quiet. Day 1, the snow crunched as I drilled into the frozen earth to collect core samples. I collected samples methodically, from different sites that had been marked on a map ahead of time. I spent the few hours of daylight as efficiently as possible, but I couldn't help but notice the silence, a constant distraction tugging at the back of my mind. Night had fallen by the time I returned to the cabin. The trees loomed like dark, twisted creatures. their branches bowing under the weight of the snow. I pulled the door shut behind me and made sure it was locked. The air in the cabin felt thick, almost suffocating. The hum of the fridge, the ticking of the clock on the wall. At least the white noise provided some relief from the silence. I made myself a cup of tea and started sorting the notes and data I had written down throughout the day. Day 2. The headache started the next morning, a throbbing ache behind my eyes that wouldn't go away. Must be the years of stale air in the cabin, I thought. I stumbled over to the window and opened it wide. The cold air hit me in the face, sharp and biting. The headache didn't seem to lessen, but at least the cabin felt less stifling. I left the window open as I made breakfast and got ready for today's work. It wasn't the first time I'd felt this way. Jet lag, lack of sleep, stress. I assumed it was a combination of all of that. By midday, I started feeling worse. I would look down on my map for a few seconds, and when I looked back up, the trees seemed different. I would open my notebook to write down measurements, only to find multiple pages of notes I didn't remember writing. I felt like time was slipping. I sat down on a rock to gather my thoughts, and when I opened my eyes again, the sun had already set. The forest felt alien in the dark. I looked at my map and estimated that I was around 40 minutes away from the cabin. That's when I first saw it. A shadow in the corner of my vision. I froze and glanced up. Just beyond the tree line, something tall and thin shifted between the pines. I squinted, trying to focus, but it darted behind a narrow tree before I could make it out. Something was following me. A shadow, always in the periphery. Every time I turned my head, it would disappear behind a tree. It looked too tall and too thin to be a human. I picked up my speed, but the shadow kept pace, flickering just out of reach all the way back to the cabin. I made the hike back in just 20 minutes. Day 3. The headaches had faded, but a constant dizziness took their place, making my head spin. I tried to push through it, focusing on my work. The first couple of hours went smoothly enough. I took it easy and drank plenty of water. I was writing down notes on some terrain features when I saw it again, the dark silhouette, quickly ducking behind a tree. I paused for a moment, my eyes focusing on the spots where I had just seen it. In the daylight, I felt a bit more confident. I slowly walked toward the tree. My breath came in shallow bursts and my hands became clammy despite the cold. I reached the place where I thought I'd seen it, but there was nothing. I scanned the clearing. No movement, no shadow. The snow seemed undisturbed except for my own footprints. I circled the tree once, then again, searching for any sign that something or someone had been there. As I turned to leave, I caught sight of the entity about 50 meters away, peeking out from behind another tree. I took a step forward, expecting it to vanish like before, but this time it didn't move. I took another cautious step toward it. In an instant, it darted upward, climbing the trunk with a speed that could rival a squirrel. It disappeared into the snow-covered canopy above. I made it back to the cabin before dark this time. I lit a fire in the fireplace, gathered some snow to melt for my evening tea, and grabbed my notebook from my backpack. The fire would burn bright and intensely as it heated up my small sanctuary. I went back to the table. Suddenly, I was outside, in my socks, standing in the snow. I could barely feel my arms and legs. The notebook was still clutched in my hand. The light from the cabin was visible in the distance, and the front door stood wide open. How? I muttered to myself. Had I blacked out, sleepwalked, or had the forest entity done this? I stumbled inside the cabin and sank into a chair in front of the fire. My clothes were soaked, and I sat there, hoping for a sleep that never seemed to come. The rest of the night passed in a blur. The shadows cast by the fire danced across the walls, and with every hour that passed, they seemed to grow more alive. As the fire died down to smoldering coals, the shadows still remained. Day 4, I felt like I was losing my mind. I saw more of them now, behind every tree, in every window, in the corners of the cabin, and in the darkness beneath my bed. I couldn't concentrate on anything, not even the simplest tasks. I no longer cared about the survey. I no longer cared about the radio tower. I just needed to get out. I grabbed my coat and stumbled out of the cabin, too dizzy to think straight. The snow crunched beneath my boots as I trudged through the trees. It was following me, always a few footsteps behind. I could feel it breathing down my neck, a cold breeze. Then came a low hissing sound, quiet at first, but growing louder with every step. My headache was becoming unbearable. Just as I felt my legs begin to give out from exhaustion, I tripped over something, a metal pipe sticking out of the snow. The metal pipe, thick and rusted, protruded from the ground like a withered tree stump. Faint letters were stamped into the metal, nearly obscured by the snow and frost. Warning, gas pipeline. A loud hissing sound clearly emanating from the pipe, an odorless and colorless gas poisoning the air. I staggered back, my body tingling with a mix of horror and nausea. The shadow was right there, no longer hiding. It didn't have to. It stood in front of me, still and silent. Was it really just a figment of my oxygen-starved brain's imagination? I used the last of my energy to get up on all fours and started crawling away. Then I blacked out. I woke up in the helicopter with an oxygen mask strapped to my face. "He's awake," someone said to the pilot. "How are you feeling?" What happened?" was all I managed to say. "Well, we were about to ask you the same," the pilot replied. "We found you lying face down in the snow. You were lucky we got to you when we did. You have a mild hypothermia. We also recovered all your gear. Everything was stacked neatly at the rendezvous point. I'm writing this down, hoping that putting it on paper will help me make sense of what happened out there."